Hello humans. Today I want to talk to you about something that was trending all over social media this week, and that thing is Brexit regret. Recent polls have shown that Brexit regret is at an all-time high. Now I know a lot of Brexiteers that are going to listen to this will just roll their eyes at that. We've heard and seen it all before, right? The polls showed Brexit losing in the first place by a landslide, and that didn't happen. And then we had a string of single issue elections about Brexit, all having unfavourable polls, but we kept winning. But on this one, I do believe it. I really do think that Brexit regret is at an all-time high. And I want to talk about where that actually comes from, because it can't be a sentiment derived from data, and it can't be a sentiment derived from the messaging of our current Labour government, because at the exact same time Brexit regret was trending, Keir Starmer was in the House of Commons saying this.
The ONS say we've got the highest investment for 19 years. PwC, second best place to invest in the world. IMF upgrading growth, predicted fastest growing major economy in Europe. Wages up, inflation down. Mr. Speaker, there's more to do. We're reforming planning and regulation, building the new homes that we need, supporting a third runway at Heathrow. And as she admitted to the CBI in November, there's no point me just complaining about Labour, she said. It's obvious that we Conservatives lost the confidence of business. We're not taking lectures from them.
Now, what Keir Starmer said there was mostly true. Investment in the UK really is at a 19-year high, higher than pre-Brexit levels. We really are the second most attractive place to invest in the world, second only to the United States, and above the EU and all its member states. They inherited the fastest growing economy in the G7, and now growth forecasters say we're going to be one of the fastest growing economies in Europe. So where is this resurgence of Brexit regret coming from, and how will rejoining the EU solve any of our problems? On the face of it, it seems to me that rejoining the EU is probably one of the worst things we could do as a country right now. Let me explain why. The biggest advantage to joining the EU is having access to their single market. But nobody seems to mention that we have a free trade deal with the EU. We have tariff-free access to that single market, but without many of the rules and regulations that come with membership of the EU. And since Brexit, we have also joined a trade bloc called the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, the CPTPP. This is the world's second largest trade bloc behind the EU and represents 13% of the global economy. When you add that to our free trade with the EU, that provides the United Kingdom tariff-free, open trade with 27% of the global economy. So please explain to me the advantage of rejoining the EU at this time. What it would mean by rejoining the EU is that we would have to give up our membership to the CPTPP and go from having access to 27% of the global economy back down to the 14% in the EU. Rejoining the EU at this time will also mean having to go back to the level playing field and the fair play rules within the trade bloc. So we seal ourselves off from free trade with more of the global economy and revert back to the rules and regulations that made us want to leave in the first place. And let's not forget that when we were members of the EU, our net contribution was 10 billion. If we rejoin the EU, we will be 10 billion net contributors again, 10 billion worse off. So again, somebody explain to me, why in the hell would we rejoin? It seems to me that we're in a very, very advantageous situation. Instead of being pessimistic and surrendering 27% access to the global economy and reverting back to just 14% with many more rules and regulations, how about we be more optimistic and start chasing America for that free trade deal? After all, they represent 25% of the global economy. Imagine a situation where the United Kingdom had a free trade deal with the EU, membership to the CPTPP, and a free trade deal with the United States of America. What that would mean is that there's potential here for this little island of ours to have free trade with more than half of the global economy. Why is this not the current ambition? Why is this not the narrative? Why is this not the goal? Why do people want us to rejoin the EU? I simply myself personally don't see any advantage. And we have to go back to the question of where is this Brexit regret coming from? And I have a few theories. The first theory is that, life is shitter. When you compare life in the UK 10 years ago and compare it to today, it's objectively shitter. We've managed to get rid of the Tories, so they're out, and unfortunately the Labour government haven't been in power long enough to be held accountable or responsible for any of this, so we can all just blame Brexit. It's the boogeyman that keeps giving. But I think simply blaming Brexit for the shit that we're in is narrow-minded, short-sighted, and completely lacking in context. The reality is, the declining living standards that we've experienced in the United Kingdom isn't a trend unique to the United Kingdom. We see the exact same trend in the entire Western world. That includes America, Canada, and all of the EU member states. New Zealand and Australia alike. The entire Western world has declined. So simply blaming Britain's problems on Brexit, again, to me, seems incredibly silly. By blaming Brexit for all our problems, we don't take into account the incredibly favourable situation that we find ourselves in regards to international trade. And there's a lot of data that simply just doesn't back up the Brexit regret narrative, and we'll get to that. But my second theory, and the one I personally believe, the reason for this resurgence in Brexit regret, it's simply that the pro-Remainers are really petty. They've been butthurt since the referendum in 2016. They lost the debate, they lost the argument, and they haven't stopped moaning since. They're not going to be paying attention to the trading position that we're in, again favourable. They're not going to be paying attention to data that doesn't suit their confirmation bias. They simply just want to get us back into the EU so they can be winners, win the fight, win the argument, and look back at all the Brexiteers and simply go, nah. It's really petty and pathetic, I know, but look back at how they've behaved since the referendum. And it kind of lines up, wouldn't you say? From my perspective, the biased perspective of a Brexiteer, of course, because I am biased and I am a Brexiteer, it seems to me that every time someone doesn't like how things are going, they just blame Brexit and they ignore the reality of the advantageous position that we are in regards to international trade. And we now have a Labour government bragging about how we are doing so well, the best it's been in decades. According to Keir Starmer, that is. More favourable to invest in than all the other EU states. We're now forecast to grow faster than all of the EU member states on our own. More access to the global economy than we had inside the EU. Less regulations, less rules. Why on earth would we give that up now by rejoining the EU? Thanks for listening.